It's absolutely the perfect time of year to be picking up the wood pallets at Dollar Tree. If you are not grabbing these around the fall season, I don't know what you're waiting for. You can transform them into so many different things. And today we're going to be creating a raven decor piece with these. I probably should be using 6, but we're going to use 4 and make them a little stumpy. First things first, we're going to need to connect all these joints. So I laid them all out and then I grabbed my popsicle stick. Ooh, how many of yous am I triggering right now? You know how many times over the years people are like, it's not a popsicle stick, it's a tongue depressor, it's a crafter stick. Guess what? Your opinion of what I call this is none of my business. And I'm gonna call it a popsicle stick. Now we're gonna take some of my Titebond Quick and Thick and smush it in between the connecting sections. And then I'm gonna trim my popsicle stick down into little bits and put it where I attach that Titebond Quick and Thick. And yeah, I had to go find all the pieces because they went flying. The hot glue helps me get that immediate hold and keep the popsicle stick pieces in place as the Titebond dries. And if you want to use a different technique, you go right ahead. I like doing it this way because it keeps the appearance of the pallets and you don't see like a strip behind the pallet itself after you have it as your decor piece. But everybody does everything differently. This is just what works best for me. If you want to use a whole strip across the sections to keep everything together, by all means, you go right ahead. I've made probably 100 pallet DIYs at this point after all these years, and this is just what works best for me. Since it's a raven, we're gonna paint it up with this black matte acrylic paint. You can absolutely use whatever you would like, and I am taking my water bottle and giving this a nice spritzy spritz. I prefer to wet my palettes down and then paint them. These things are a pain to paint and it can take a lot of time because of all the gaps. So it really helps move the paint around quickly, and it only takes a couple minutes if they're completely saturated, and then the paint is able to get in all those little sections really quickly. And another way I like to tell people, if you want to go that route, spray paint works really well, and I used to even immerse them in tins. Once the piece was dry, I grabbed some fabric and I grabbed 2 different colors. You could absolutely use one color if you would like. You could use burlap, you could use ribbon, whatever works best for you. But we're gonna need first to make a hat, and then next we're gonna make a little scarf. And I decided to just kind of use 2 patterns color-wise that kind of complemented each other, and frayed this one off. Like, I cut it. Look at my childlike scissors. Seriously, it is the never ending question, where are my scissors? All the time. The years I've been doing this and I still end up with that. 2 kids are grown, out of the house. My other one is a teenager. Why do I still own those? All right, rant over. Okay, probably I still own those because I can never find the other ones and I leave them sitting near. Anyhow, I frayed this off, and you'll see here that I left that little piece because it wasn't long enough. So I didn't completely snap it off at the end. I just cut it and then pulled it the opposite way. You can make your scarf as thick or as thin as you would like. And then I just tied it off to the side. And then I went and found my big girl scissors. In case you're wondering where they were at my whatnot packing station, but I found them, okay? And I cut this off, giving it some length, okay? Because you know, our raven was a little stumpy. This might have looked better with 6 pallets. Let me know in the comments below if you like it with the 4, if you would make it and you want to make it with the 6. But I thought cutting the hat to where it's, you know, longer, it would give it a little bit of height. When I was done, it was time to bring on in the stapler. You can absolutely glue your piece on if you would like. I mean, I like to staple things, so we're gonna staple them. I took this and wrapped it around the back and made sure that it was aligned with that top lip part on the back of the pallet. This way I could staple as much as I wanted all the way across, or not. Seriously? Now at this point, I felt like it was a little limp, you know. So I grabbed my good old friend, some messy moss. I mean, if you have filler, you know, or you have fabric or whatever in there, I happen to always have this stuff, miserable moss right next to me. So I stuffed some of that in there and grabbed some of my twine. And then, you know, kind of eyeballed this at this point. If you want to make a bow around yours, you go right ahead. I decided to just tie a knot in the back and then spent a minute adjusting our little scarf here. Now, the reason I did the hat and scarf first is because of this. I knew trying to put the face on here first before we put the clothes on might have not have worked out in my favor. So I put the hat and the scarf on and then sketched out the eyes and the nose and then brought on inner paint. And it just kept it simple. I kept the eyes in an oblong shape and I made the nose like a carrot in the shape, or upside down triangle, however you would like to say it. Use whatever colors you would like. I just use white for the eyes and then orange for the nose. Eyes are always tricky for me, so I like to take a minute, let that paint sit on there before I bring in my dotting tool, and decided to create some little black circles up in the corners. You could obviously put your little black circles wherever you would like, but I went with up in the corners, and then I came back in with my white paint and added some accents around the nose. I put a little dot right on the side of our black dots we put in our, what are they, irises? Is that what they're called? Don't start me lying. Say it, don't start me lying. But I put little dots in here just to finish it off. And then I brought on in my vintage buttons and grabbed a nice big one to pop in the corner and added some more of that messy moss right in the top of our hat. And I think this piece turned out so adorable. What do you guys think? Are you going to be making a raven out of Dollar Tree palettes this fall season? Take one of Dollar Tree's 8x10 frames and transform it into a beautiful fall decor wall piece. Now we're going to need to remove the innards of it because we're not going to be using any of that. Instead, we're going to need to grab one of Dollar Tree's flat 8x10 artist canvases. We're going to be using this as our decoupage base, and believe it or not, since it's so thin, it fits perfectly in this frame. I don't really care for the color on our frame, so I'm just going to take some of my multi-surface paint and give it a nice coat. You could absolutely paint this whatever color you would like, or leave it just the way that it is. I wanted to give mine a little bit of that farmhouse feel. I rarely do that style, but felt a little farmhousey for this fall decor piece, and added some black paint as well for distressing. You can distress as heavy or as light as you want. I went a little heavy and then came back in with some more white paint to kind of dim it down. It's completely up to you. For our decoupage portion, I'm going to be using my TDS Creative Decoupage tissue paper. This is called Scripts. Now, if you don't want to use this tissue paper, you could absolutely take the idea, remix it, use some newspaper, you could use a book page, just create yourself some sort of background that has like that script dictionary type style, and you'll see what I'm talking about in just a second. So I cut that down to size and then took one of my TDS Creative artist brushes in the fan style to apply a layer of Mod Podge. But of course, I had to get completely grossed out. Why? Why? Oof. Oh my gosh. I want to throw the whole project out. I spared you the cleanup process. You're welcome. You're welcome. Anyhow, I took a layer of Mod Podge and applied it all over to our canvas, and then applied our tissue paper right down over top. You could use cling wrap or a brayer, whatever you would like to attach your piece. I'm just using my fingers to smooth this down. It didn't matter to me if it had that rustic feel with a couple wrinkles around it. While that was drying, I went in my stash and grabbed some of these floral bits I had from Dollar Tree from last year, and I thought that the colors went perfectly with the background and the frame. So I cut them down to size and then just grabbed some twine to wrap around the bottom so we could hide those ugly little stem pieces. I do recommend using some tacky glue or Titebond Quick and Thick to glue this down. I just use a little bit of hot glue to pop mine down for the video's sake, but absolutely, if you're going to be hanging this in your house or reselling your piece, make sure you're using something like this to get that long lasting hold so your projects last. Once that was attached, I just grabbed some of my vintage lace and tore a section off. You could use fabric for this or burlap, whatever you would like. Just make sure it's thin enough to fit in that frame, because literally this canvas perfectly goes in this frame. So too much is going to create some resistance while you're trying to attach it back down. Put whatever hanger you would like on the back. I just set mine up for staging up against the wall with a couple little pieces around it, and think this fall decor piece turned out so good. People, I was not sure how large this beautiful high-end lantern was I found on Kirkland's for $79.99, but I was certain next time I popped in a Dollar Tree, they had some lanterns and I was going to pick one up along with one of their LED candles because I knew that I could dupe this for under 10 bucks. Now paint yours if you want to paint yours. I could have painted mine to make it look more identical to the Kirkland's dupe, but to save me some grief, I decided to keep mine black, and I think it looks elegant anyway. I am going to grab some messy moss, okay, and squeeze it on in here with our LED candle, because who doesn't love the smell of this, a fresh bag of this stuff, people. Ooh, it's righteous. What is it? It's got like a mist that flies out of it. Oh, I love moss. Can't y'all tell? Like, I have such a fuzzy spot in my heart for it. Anyhow, I added some eucalyptus in here for just a little of that fall feel. Added some accents around our piece, and this might be the easiest fall dupe I've ever recreated. And it has such a high-end feel, and it came from Dollar Tree. Every time I see these pumpkin-shaped glass jars at Dollar Tree, I have to pick them up. I always love making DIYs. I even got lucky one year and got them orange joints. Today we're going to transform this into one of the nastiest candies on the planet. I mean, if you like them, you know, they gross me out. For our paint palette, are you shocked? You should not be shocked. Now, I recommend using multi-surface. I did not have the colors I needed in multi-surface, so I'm using the chalk paints. They work well with glass, but I do recommend putting 2 layers of a base coat on here before getting started and allowing that to dry for a day before you do the layering. And the reason why I also wanted to do the chalk paint is because I want to create an ombre blend on this, and multi-surface does not blend well. The chalk paints do. And if you're like, Brandy, what are you talking about? I know it's not a piece of furniture. It's a piece of glass. It's fine. We're going to get there. Just roll with me, okay? I'm a stone furniture, so I'm like, let's blend this piece. We're going to start with the yellow. We're going to work our way up and then do another layer of orange. And no, I'm not taping anything off because we're going to blend everything together. Once this is dry, I then come back in with my yellow brush and my orange brush, and then I have a brush that has absolutely no paint. I call this my blend brush. I do take some water and I spray that on our piece and then go in between the 2 colors, creating that blend. You're going to also want to make sure that you are wiping this blend brush off as the paint starts to saturate the brush, because you want it as clean as possible, so this way your blending stays clean and you don't have the mix of colors creating a whole another color. It's just a faded blend, one color into another color. And you're then at this point just going to alternate the 3 brushes. You're going to alternate the orange, the yellow, the blend brush, and go back and forth until you have dominant colors and then a faded line. And I did the same thing at the top with the white and the orange. You can do this as much as you would like or as little, and it does take a lot of practice. So if you go to do this, please don't get frustrated, and I don't recommend starting with glass if you've never done this. I recommend starting with a piece of wood. So just to let you know, because in reality, I should have put a base coat of acrylic gesso on this and allowed that to dry before I even attempted this. But I don't think it turned out too bad without me having to do all the prepping. I just had to make sure it was drying nonstop. Be very mindful. For the top, I wanted to add some of that neutralness in here and show you how you can take those neutral colors and add it with a little bit of bright colors and still end up with a piece that will blend in really well to your home for the fall season. I really love how this turned out. Next time you're in Dollar Tree, head on over to their floral section and grab you some pieces like this and some berry bits to recreate this gorgeous high-end swag I found at Kirkland's. Now, I wasn't exactly sure how much I was going to need, and I'm florally challenged, so I grabbed quite a few things, along with these bows, because I'm also bow challenged, and I figured we'll cut that corner too. Listen, if you can make bows, go ahead and do that. Now for our base, I'm going to use this large paint stick I had in my stash that I picked up once upon a time from Home Depot. If you have like an old broom or a wicker wreath, that would be a great base too. Now we're going to need to bring on in the wire cutters to chop our base down to size, because this was just a little bit longer than I needed it. And people, little tip, if you got hand grip strength issues, just take this and use your miter box. That would be easier, or your miter saw. I was being lazy right here and decided that I was just gonna take this and chop it from one side to the next, but it was rough on my hands, so keep that in mind. But I'm just sharing with you how I did it, even though it wasn't the most efficient way. It still got the job done. Now, next up, let's bring on in the drill gun here. Make sure you have a decent size drill bit. This way we're able to put our hanger through with no problems. I wanted to get this part done first before we started assembling everything, in case, you know, as I tried to drill it later, things might have got wonky, and we don't want that. I had some floral foam in my stash that, you know, had some holes popped in it, and I figured, let's just cut this down to size. We're going to glue it along our painter stick. There are several different ways. I've made door swags before, and usually I'll use a wreath base. For this particular style, I would have used like the grapevine style wreaths, or like the wicker style wreaths, whatever you want to call it, or even a broom, as I had mentioned before. I thought those would be really nice bases, but I couldn't find any of those, so this is what we're rolling with. Next, we're going to bring on in the messy moss. And no, I'm not going to give it an intro, but we need to cover up that floral foam, and I didn't want to spend a whole bunch of $1.75s at Dollar Tree, so this is how we're going to accomplish that. For our attachment, I'm going to be using some tacky glue and some hot glue, and of course, really, I'm like the queen of clogged holes at this point. There wasn't nothing really to show. It just, I popped a little hole in there. Wasn't too clogged. Okay. I poured a nice amount of tacky glue on here and then spreaded out that messy moss and use the hot glue. The tacky glue, especially if you're going to hang something like this on a door, it's going to last longer and keep your piece in place. The hot glue is going to give us immediate hold. And yes, I went back and added some of that tacky glue around the floral foam attached to the yardstick. And people, seriously, every time. I am already regretting it. I'm regretting it. I'm regretting it. I'm regretting it. Oh, I'm regretting it. Your girl mustard though. Okay, we got through it. I attached the rest of that moss and then grabbed some twine. Now, if I had the, you know, jute twine, the nautical rope stuff that they had at Dollar Tree, I would use that, but I didn't have any. So I just took some regular twine and cut several strands and twirled them together and popped them through, looping the hole into a knot, so this way it would hang evenly on the front door. I cut off any excess, and feel free to make your hanger however you would like. Now that we have it basically ready, we can get to the fun part and decorate with our floral pieces. I stuck them inside of our floral foam and took additional tacky glue and was popping it where I felt necessary as I put this piece together. When I was happy with everything, I attached our little pre-made bow. If you made one at home, add yours on there. and then added some extra moss to cover up the rest of our yardstick and our floral foam. Next, when you're in Dollar Tree, grab some of their floral jute rope. We're going to be using this to make us an adorable decorative fall mini broom, and grab some of this mesh stuff while you're at it. If you don't want to use this, you could use burlap. I didn't want to waste my burlap. For our base, I'm going to be using this circular wood scrap piece, and for the broom handle, I have this wood spindle that I upcycled. Now we're going to need to attach the two, and we're going to bring on in the drill for this and use a drill bit that is about the size of our spindle piece. Now if you don't have one of these, my friend Misty over at Spin Designs just created a Dollar Tree DIY with one of their wood plunger handles. It's a lot larger than this piece, but she also happened to give me a shout out in her video, which my community let me know. So I had to give her one over here because she had no idea that I had already made one of these, and I thought it was a little synchronicity. I absolutely love how hers turned out, by the way. And you could always cut that Dollar Tree plunger down to make a mini one if you wanted to. To attach the spindle, I took the Titebond wood glue and put it all around the tip and then pressed it into the hole that we drilled along with some of those wood shavings, just to ensure that there weren't any gaps between the hole that we drilled and the spindle that we put in. And then I cut down some of this mesh ribbon. That's what I like calling it. You guys call it whatever you want, but it's meshy ribbon for me. And now it's time to bring on in the stapler. We're going to be using this to staple our mesh ribbon all around the base of our broom. If you want to skip this part, you go right ahead. The reason I'm doing it is so that way that it fluffs out our broom head. This way I'm not like gluing and gluing and gluing and gluing a ton of pieces together. If you want to do it that way, you're welcome to. It's also going to cover up our base that we have here and create like a brown background. You could also paint this if you want. Completely up to you. Again, do you. I'm just here to inspire and offer the ideas. When I was happy with it, I took the stapler and stapled the piece down and cut off any excess that was sticking out. I then grabbed the twine and started unraveling it to be able to create those individual bristles. And this is a little painstaking. Right, I'm lying. It's a lot painstaking. There's so many times in my crafting life that I wonder why I don't just stick to decoupage. Just saying. Anyhow, moving on. I was like, I'm not unraveling any more of that, and I grabbed some fabric. Okay, y'all, listen. I think this turned out fabulous, by the way. I thought this was a great idea to grab some fabric, and it was kind of fall themed, so, you know, it made sense. I cut some strips off, tore some strips, and then cut them all to size. I made sure as I was cutting them, though, I will tell you this, I did leave them way longer than I wanted to be able to trim it down, because I knew once I sat this up with the bristles that it was gonna lay a certain way. You feel what I'm saying? So I started applying my glue. I used tacky glue for that long hold, and I used hot glue to get that immediate hold, and just started piecing together our bristles. And there was no real rhyme or reason. I just went according to what I thought looked good, and then see how I'm holding it up here and just trimming it. And then I kept putting it on the table to see what it looked like once it was sitting, and then would like push them together to get the desired look that I wanted. When I was happy with that, I took some more tacky glue and went around where I put that mesh, because I wanted the bristles to all kind of stay in place. You can absolutely do this however you want. You don't have to glue anything. If you're happy with it just flowing free out in the wild, you go right ahead. You leave your broom head however you would like. Wanted mine to, you know, stay in place. Now those ends, they were doing us no justice, people, so we had to cover them up. I grabbed my tacky glue and my hot glue, and I grabbed some more of that jute rope. You could absolutely use fabric, some burlap, whatever you would like to cover up your ends. This is just, again, how I went about this. And to finish it off, I decided to add a little acorn on here and a little floral piece. I love the neutrality of it. It gives you the ability to keep it up in your home all year long and place it anywhere you would like, and just love your creativity. Next time you're in Dollar Tree, head on over to the Crafter Square section and grab one of these wall decor pieces and one of these little pallet box pieces. Well, really, grab two of these joints because we're going to be making a fall pumpkin decor centerpiece. Listen, people, I know you're doubting me right now, but just roll on with me. The end result's going to shock you. To start off, we're going to need to nip the tip off of these and make them flat. So this way they sit flush on the table. Now, to do that, I'm going to bust out the big gun. If you got yourself a little craft table saw, by all means, use that. But anytime I can bust this joint out, I make it happen. Now, a little piece did go flying off of there. One piece is good. So, I mean, I was like, you know what? We'll wing it. It'll be just fine. For our paint color, I'm going to take some of this Rust-Oleum textured spray paint. Now, you want to make sure you shake this up really well. And for my ASMR lovers, I got you. I am so pleased with the way that this textured spray paint turned out on these Dollar Tree pieces. You would never know that these were from Dollar Tree. And mine, the little pieces, another one flicked off. It's fine. Now we're going to need to bring on in the miter shears. I'm going to be using these to cut down our large paint sticks so we can create stems. Feel free to create a stem or use whatever bits you would like for your stem. This is just how I chose to go about it. And I will tell you, for the large paint sticks, this is not the easiest way. Use anything else to cut this. I don't know why I keep torturing myself. Oh, it's so rough on my hands. But here we are. I did get to the end result of two little paint stick bits and took some yarn to wrap them in. Again, feel free to use twine. You could use some nautical rope, whatever you would like to wrap fabric to wrap your pieces in. I just went with some yarn. I liked the cream color and thought it would look good with the textured paint. To attach our pieces, I'm just going to be using some tacky glue. I've had really a good experience over the years creating pieces and reselling them whenever it comes to taking fabric and attaching it with tacky glue. I know that it's going to give me that good lasting hold. So I just put a nice generous amount on our pumpkin here and then smushed the stems in place. Now for some added fuzzies inside, because, you know, things are a little wonky if you don't use hot glue to like hold it in place, I grabbed some of my little clamps and just clamped them down. And then I grabbed some messy moss because, I mean, it's fall. It's probably the only time of year I'm going to be using moss. So, I mean, I grabbed some and I placed it around our stem. One, it's going to kind of hide that disconnect. And two, it just makes it a little bit more fallish. I grabbed some little sprigs of bits and then tore up some fabric to make a little messy bow. And you're welcome for the ASMR. There are a lot of ways you can create messy bows. I like to do mine one of two ways. One, pile them on top of one another. When I'm happy with the arrangement, I take a stapler and just staple everything together and then glue them down with my tacky glue. Or two, this method where I put a pile of tacky glue off to the side and I smush each individual piece into that pile and then press it on top of the other one and then tacky glue it on down to where we're sticking it. When I was happy with the messy bow, it was time to find us a button. Yes, I collect vintage buttons, for anyone wondering. And this is not all of them. I found some buttons that I felt matched and glued them in the center of our messy bow and then attached everything together. Absolutely love how this piece turned out. For $27.99 at Kirkland's, I knew we could dupe these pieces using some Dollar Tree supplies a whole lot cheaper. Now, I was a little sad that I couldn't find any of their foam pumpkins, the larger joints, but I found these decorative pumpkins off in their floral section and grabbed me 2 of these right here. Grab whatever candles you would like. I headed over to Dollar Tree's little LEDs section and just picked up 2 of these. Now people, these are foam, and it's going to take a little bit of finagling to get these the exact way that I would like them. You remix this idea with whatever works best for you. First off, we're going to start off by removing the stems, and I'm just taking a little clay tool. You could use an X-Acto knife or a regular knife, whatever makes you fuzzy inside, to cut a circle that is big enough to fit our tapered candles that we picked up from Dollar Tree. You want to make sure that you pull enough of that foam out so the actual candle will sit in there. If you don't, it will wobble and the pumpkin will tip over as well. For our base coat for our pumpkins, to get that high-end look at the end, I'm going to use some acrylic gesso. This stuff has a little bit of a texture on it, and since the foam has like those holes and grooves, it's going to help us fill in some of those imperfections and give the end result, once we've painted it, a little bit more of that high-end look that we would like to see if we were using a ceramic pumpkin. You will notice that while you're using it, it is kind of thick. It really does level itself out if you don't have a bunch gooked in sections. So don't worry too much about that. Once the piece was dry, I then grabbed 2 colors I wanted to paint the pumpkins. Now, using a multi-surface or a chalk paint, it's completely up to you. Both are going to give you good coverage, but if you have to use acrylic paint, which unfortunately I ended up having to resort to because I didn't close my chalk paint as well as I should have from last year. But if I'm being honest, this is kind of like my fall mixture. I love mixing these 2 colors together. It gives you like a moody orange, that deep rustic color. Now, I will tell you, if you go to do this, this is why they say the difference between one versus the other. That little orange pumpkin could probably have used a whole nother coat, and that's 3 coats on that pumpkin. The chalk pumpkin, well, that one is 1 coat. We're gonna dupe this beautiful $89.99 centerpiece from Kirkland's for a whole lot less, using some wood pieces from Dollar Tree and some glass pieces from Dollar Tree. You can take this idea and make it as large as you would like, use as many boxes as you want. We're not reinventing the wheel here, we're just going to be gluing the boxes together. I'm using some tacky glue and some hot glue, one for a long hold, one for that immediate hold. Use whatever type of glue you would like. Wood glue would be great as well. And then I'm clamping it together and I let that dry for about 3 hours. When I came back, I grabbed some antique Waverly wax and a baby wipe and gave our piece a nice stain. Then I grabbed one of my molds. You could use a stencil for this idea if you would like, if you didn't want to use a mold, and you can absolutely put your clay on before you do your stain. It's completely up to you. I decided to wait until after to make sure that wax was underneath of the clay. It's just how I went about it. It doesn't really matter either way. My favorite clay, I get asked often, is called paper clay. I was out of it. This was just some air dry clay I had sitting off to the side, and I was really unhappy with it because you'll see here at the end, it shrunk so bad. I've never seen air dry clay shrink this bad. To attach my clay, I usually use tacky glue, wood glue, Type Bond Quick and Thick. This allows the clay to stick onto wood really well, and ceramic. I never just use hot glue. And I also don't really like using my hot glue to make the molds. It's just a preference. You guys do what you want to do. Also, it takes so many glue sticks and I'm like, oh my gosh, another glue stick, really? So I just like using my clay. When it was dry, I took some more of that antique Waverly wax and I brushed it all over our clay, allowed that to dry, and then I took a little bit of my white multi-surface paint between my fingers and just did a light dry brushing, allowing those details in the clay to kind of pop out. Added in our glass pieces, our little candle pieces. These are from Dollar Tree as well. Some messy moss and florals, and that's going to be it for this dupe. Large craftwood pieces at Dollar Tree are perfect for so many DIYs that you can create at home. Today we're going to cut one down and turn it into a large tag decor piece for fall, incorporating this pumpkin piece. And people, being real with you, if you're trying to save money because you have a lot of projects to make like this, go to Home Depot, get a piece about this size and cut it down. You'll save some money. Now I busted out my big old miter saw for this project, and then I turned our piece on 45-degree angle so we could nip the edges off of our pieces of wood. And we're just going to do it at the top edges, and I'm going to leave about 1/4 of an inch to an inch in the center, giving us that tag look. Next, we're going to need to bring on in our drill along with a 3/4 inch spade bit so we can put our little hole in here for our tag. And people, make sure that you have something underneath of your wood so you don't drill a hole in here. You're going to notice that I kind of stopped for a second. I'm like, I don't think it's thick enough. And I just grabbed some random little piece of wood. I was like, oh, this is enough cushion now, we're good. And then carried on about drilling the hole in the rest of the way. Now everything's a little crusty, so we're going to need to bring on in our little finger sander and give everything a little shave down. And I went around the whole piece doing this. Now if you want to keep yours a little rustic, you don't have to, sand yours down. This is just how I went about it. Next, I grabbed my white Waverly chalk paint and spritzed down the wood and gave the front and the sides a nice coat. I did not cover the back with this paint. And because I get asked often, why am I spraying the wood? It just helps move the chalk paint around a little bit, it thins it out, and it helps conserve some of my paint. While that's drying, it is time to pick out a napkin. So I busted out my stash and went through our candidates until I landed on one. I thought this piece would be perfect because it was a full large design. It didn't have a repetitive one in different sections of the napkin. So I tore a corner and then just pulled off the top decorative layer and trimmed down our piece to cover out most of the bottom section. We're going to decoupage this onto the majority of the tag. We're going to be using our Folk Art Outdoor varnish for our medium. If you're new to decoupage or you've decoupaged before and you're looking for some inspiration, I have a whole decoupage playlist I usually keep down in my description box. Just click the more button underneath this video and you'll be able to check it out there. Tons of tips and tricks and information in there for you. Now, 2 items I feel like I have to have when I'm decoupaging a napkin are my TDS Decoupage fan brushes. These are artist brushes. They're in the fan style. I love how they smush right up underneath the napkin as I'm applying the medium, so you get a flawless connection throughout your art. And a sponge. I love using dry sponges. This is just a little dry kitchen sponge. I picked these up in a pack from Walmart. Some people recently have said that they've been able to find them at Dollar Tree. You get them wherever you would like. I usually cut them in half and then I will take them and press them down on top of our napkin. They help soak up any extra medium that is seeping up through the pores in the napkin, so you don't have a ton of that medium sitting on top of your napkin, helping create wrinkles, as well as flattening your piece out as you go. Now we're going to need to bring on in the finger sander after our piece is completely dry. You do not want to sand off your decoupage while it is still wet. Allow it to dry at least 3 to 4 hours if you got the patience. I let mine dry overnight and then took the same folk art medium and went around the top of the napkin, putting a light layer of sealer. I put the pumpkin here, making sure to go around it, and the reason is because I didn't want to put a layer of sealer behind the pumpkin where I'm going to glue it down. I want that glue to kind of seep in through the napkin to get an attachment onto the thin layer of medium we put underneath so our piece stays stuck together really well. You can use hot glue if you want to, but I decided to use some of my Type-On Quick and Thick, and then I grabbed some clamps and allowed this to dry for a few hours. And just to be sure our piece was stuck on there, I wiggled it around just a little bit. And then I brought on in some burlap ribbon, and I took enough off that I could wrap the ribbon right behind each other, so it gave a little bit more of a high-end look and it wasn't see-through. When I was happy with the length, it was time to bring on in the stapler so we could pop a couple of staples in the back of this joint. I feel like I haven't brought in the stapler in a video in a long time. It's nice to see you, Fred. Now, I'm sure 2 on each side was good enough, but I just, felt like I had to pop that extra joint in there for fuzzies. I took some tacky glue and then grabbed some little floral bits and just started decorating one side, and then took the stapler and started stapling pieces in along with more tacky glue so everything stayed in place. And this is just how I like to attach pieces, especially if I plan on possibly reselling anything. I felt like the piece needed a little something something still, so I brought in some of my TDS Creative dry rub-on transfers and cut out one of the little words to pop right over top of the burlap on the right hand side. You could absolutely leave yours blank if you would like. This is just something extra I wanted to pop on here and thought that it made a great little addition to the piece. You can do your rope multiple ways and you can add whatever kind of tassel you would like. I took Dollar Tree's nautical rope and then a little bit of Dollar Tree's nautical rope and tied off a section, fraying the bits underneath of the section I tied off, and then grabbed a little vintage button to attach onto here, and that's going to be it for this fall pumpkin decor piece. If you have items like this laying around in your stash and you never know what to do with them, this is the perfect time of year to get some ideas for that. We can turn them into pumpkins, especially if they have this square shape. You just gotta disassemble them first. Then you're gonna need to bring on in the finger sander. Well, maybe not for all of the pieces like this, but these in particular, we needed to give a little sand down. So I just knocked that sheen off the top and then grabbed my multi-surface paint and applied 2 layers over the top. So we had a nice base to cover up the T, E, and the A, or the EAT, however you would like to spell that out. Next, grab you a napkin or some tissue paper or rice paper or whatever you would like to decoupage onto your pumpkins. I'm going to be using this beautiful piece right here I had in my stash, and I'm just gonna tear off the corner and rip off that top decorative layer because we don't need those sneaky layers on the back, we just want the top. And for our medium, I'm just gonna be using some good old Mod Podge. Feel free to use whatever medium works best for you. For the application, I'm gonna take one of my TDS Creative Artist brushes in the fan style and just apply a thin layer. Whenever I decoupage with napkins, I like to encourage less is more, okay? Napkins, depending on a napkin, they're not all created equal. And if they're super thin, they're really easy to destroy. I covered our pumpkins different ways for each one. And as I was applying them, I grabbed myself a little sponge. This is a dry sponge. I picked these up in a pack from Walmart and I'll cut them in half. Couple people lately been saying they find them at Dollar Tree. I get mine from Walmart, so I just like to share that from you. You get your sponges wherever you would like to get your sponges. I like to use a sponge when I'm decoupaging with a napkin to help flatten the piece out if I'm not doing the iron-on method, because any excess Mod Podge that sops up through the napkin, the sponge will absorb it, and it helps to avoid destroying your napkin. It also helps to minimize wrinkles if you care about the wrinkles. Some people do, some people don't, and it really, for me, always depends on the project that I'm creating. You'll notice here that I am putting the napkins on differently. Each one of our little pumpkins we're creating, I'm putting the napkin on in a different section because we're going to add a little transfer over top of 2 of these for an extra added accent. I did allow these to dry though and then put another layer of Mod Podge just so that way the transfers went on correctly. I'm just going to cut off 2 little sections of this lace transfer and apply onto different areas of the pumpkins that have the little bit of white on them. And you could absolutely skip this part if you would like. You could use 3 different napkins. There's so many different ways that you can create a little cohesive collection when you're decoupaging something. You can also seal over your transfers if you would like once they're completely dry. I didn't for this project. When I was happy with everything, I just used my sander to trim off all the excess. Now for our stems, I'm going to be using some wine bottle corks and taking some of my tacky glue and some hot glue to attach them right onto the top. I did cut these down to size so that way no 2 were exactly a match. It gave them a little bit extra character. And then grab some messy moss to add in for some accents around the edges and tied it off with some twine to cover up where the separation with the moss and the cork and the pumpkin are. Grab some of these pallets, people. I don't know what you're waiting for. This is the time of year. I keep saying that, fall. Okay, these pallets in fall, they go together. We're going to transform these 2 little pieces into a neutral rustic pumpkin. First up, we're just going to put them together. I've made tons of pumpkins out of these things, and usually I just use one. Today, we're going to make it a little chunky. We're going to add some tacky glue onto these, and then we're going to smoosh them together and grab some clamps. So this way we can set this off to the side for a couple hours to dry. Now at this point, people, the world is your oyster, or the crafting world, that is. You could absolutely paint it, you could decoupage it, you could do whatever you want. We, however, I want to get rid of them sides for a change. And to do that, I'm going to take one of my wood appliques from my website and we're going to trim this down. I just want to kind of cut it right in the middle. And to do that, we're going to bring on in the miter shears. I mean, at least the plan was to use the miter shears to cut this in half because truth be told, I've trimmed edges off my wood appliques often, you know what I mean? Nip the edges and stuff like that. I was confident for about 2 seconds that I could hit through the middle of it. But no. It absolutely didn't work out like that. I cheated and went outside and used the big old miter saw. So be warned that if you need to cut those, anybody getting them off my website, you're going to need some a lot stronger than miter shears. Now I'm just going to take my Titebond Quick and Thick and apply a nice layer on the back of these and then attach it right at the sides. Now I did nip the edges off of the florals so this way they weren't really sticking out of the top of our little pumpkin piece and everything was kind of flush. It wasn't perfect exactly, but it covered up our ends. I want to keep this little guy neutral, so I'm just taking some of my antique Waverly wax and applying a nice coat over the piece. And I'm using a baby wipe to spread it around, and I'm also spraying it with my water bottle to help move that wax around. When I had a nice layer covered, I then grabbed a tiny detail brush and continued going around the whole piece. I decided I wanted to give it that pumpkin-y shape and decided to kind of give it some shading. I created that line right down the center and then curved in around the edges and also made like a little divot in the bottom. When I was done, it looked like this. And then after it dried, I grabbed some white chalk paint and just dabbled a little on my finger and went over the whole thing, helping all those edges to really pop. You could use gilding wax, rub and buff, whatever you would like. Paint works just as well too. I even took the paint and went around where I did the shading as well and felt like I still needed something. So I grabbed some orange paint and blended that in with the white and the brown around all the sides to just kind of give it a little bit more of that pumpkin-y feel. And you can skip this part if you would like. It's just something I decided to add in here. My fingers were already a dirty mess, so I wasn't worried about another paint color. At this point, if you want to let this dry and then put a layer of sealer over it, you can. I was not sealing over this. I wasn't worried about it, but I did know that we needed to pick out the stem. Okay, so I grabbed a little jar of bits and popped out this little thingy, my bobber, and then grabbed my Type-On Quick and Thick, applied a layer on here, and then stuck some messy moss right around the top. I wanted to cover up those gaps some more, so I just utilized the moss for this end instead of the appliques. And at this point, I was going to leave it alone, but I couldn't help myself, and I went and found a stencil in my stash that I picked up years ago from Amazon, grabbed some of my texture paste, and popped a little pumpkin right on the corner. And off camera, I decided to also add a couple little floral pieces up at the top. I think these beauties are meant for Christmas, you know, with this little bow that we have on top here, but we're gonna transform this into a super easy pumpkin decor piece for fall. Listen, I'm really gonna need you to stop down me. I'm starting to feel some kind of way about it. Grab you some little mini pumpkins. These are from Dollar Tree. You pick whatever ones you would like to use. And then grab you some lace, grab you some fabric, completely up to you. I'm gonna pick burlap ribbon, and you could use regular burlap. Again, completely up to you. Take the idea and remix it for what works best with your decor. I'm just cutting a decent healthy size and then kind of smushing it, not to completely crimp up the piece, but to give it some disorganization. So as we're layering our fairy lights and our pumpkins in here, it looks a little bit better than just having some smoothed out ribbon swirls going on in here. Now, I did have to take a little tool to kind of push the fairy lights down and the pumpkins down, but this was just because the fairy lights were not staying and they're kind of stiff. But depending on the fairy lights that you use, you might not even have this problem. You might be able to just stuff your piece of glass and roll on with your project. Next, I'm grabbing some messy moss. And again, use whatever you would like. Use whatever color you would like. It's entirely up to you. I'm putting this on the top where we have that bow to kind of create a pumpkin feel on the top of this instead of it looking like a present. I thought this would create more of that pumpkin feel, and I put a decent amount on the top and then grabbed some little bits that I had in my stash. These are just some knob type things, some cork type things that I find whenever I'm thrifting or out at estate sales, and keep them in little containers. You can create your stem however you would like. I was going for that rustic industrial look with this piece, and I really think I nailed it. These little truck pieces at Dollar Tree are so plain, but we're about to transform this into a beautiful centerpiece. We're gonna take some Rust-Oleum textured spray paint and put a layer on both of these pieces. I thought this turned out pretty great on top of these trucks. Now at the end of the day, we're going to need two, not one, but two of the pallet boxes for this project. I did use tacky glue to attach the boxes to the truck. Just FYI, I don't know why I don't have that recorded for some reason. I'm sorry about that. Now I'm taking a little piece of square wood that I had in my stash and I'm just scoring it so this way it fits over top of our boxes. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Now I actually scored it a little short because I didn't measure it, shocker. Make sure you measure yours so it fits over there perfectly. And then I just fit this right onto the top. And the cool thing is it fits right in the center. If you don't have anything like this, you could absolutely use popsicle sticks or you could use painter sticks and cut them down. That would work as well to just kind of fit over here to create a base. See how I'm putting the little candle piece on there. Next, I'm using some ribbon and just kind of shoving it in there. You could absolutely use floral foams, completely up to you. I was actually out, so this is my this is my backup go-to for this idea. And then I shove messy moss all around to cover up the little wood pieces and put our candle piece over there so you couldn't really see the whole bottom of the candle, and where the wood was, it kind of all blended in pretty well. And then I just added in little extra pieces. And how amazing does this look on the center of a table? Grab you some of these little mini cubes at Dollar Tree. They are perfect for mini pumpkins. I love making mini decor pieces that can just accent your home anywhere. And we're going to transform these little beauties. You can absolutely paint them up if you would like to. We're going to be decoupaging ours and starting off with a base coat. I'm going to be using this DIY paint in the plaster color, and anyone that has not used DIY paints, I really love this stuff. You can use whatever paint you would like, but if you haven't tried DIY paint, I highly recommend that. This stuff is pretty great. My retailer is Sammy over at Unicorn Dust Designs. For anyone interested, her link is usually down in my description box. And if you want to add a little smile to your face, grab your heat gun and turn your little cube into a spinning top. It's the small things. It really is the small things. Anyhow, check out this beautiful napkin that I have in my stash. Okay, we're going to cut this down and take a bunch of pieces off of it. First up, I'm just going to tear a corner and then pull off them sneaky layers from our top decorative layer because we're just going to be using the top of this piece. And now I'm going to cut out 2 or 3 strips of just the floral pieces so we can add different sections onto different pieces of our cubes. And there's multiple ways you could go about this, people. If you want to do the pattern all over the whole cube, you go right ahead. This is just how I decided to design this piece. Now for our medium, I'm going to be using my Folk Art Outdoor Matte Varnish. You can absolutely use whatever you would like for this. And to apply our medium and our napkin, I'm going to be using my own TDS Creative artist brushes in the fan style, and I'm grabbing a dry kitchen sponge. I picked these up in a big old pack at Walmart and just cut them down. It's not wet, it is just dry. There really is no right or wrong way to go about decoupaging a block. As many pieces of wood that I've decoupaged over the years, one thing I've learned for sure is that each decoupage artist has their own style of getting the job done, which most artists do, right? For me with these pieces, I cut down each little section of napkin that I want it to go on each side of the block, except for the bottom. I left the bottom blank. It's been in my experience after doing so many pieces like this that you can put just one section down, and then when you flip it to the next side, you can meet it up and butt up the next design to help stop any disconnect. And if you leave it as a whole piece, which you can do, when you get to the top or the bottom, you're going to struggle trying to fold over your piece and then have to try and cut it down without destroying the designs that you have wrapped around the sides. I hope that makes sense, especially for a square. Now, if you were just doing like a wood block with like a shelf sitter, you're only doing one side or one side in the top, that would be fine, just wrapping it around. But doing the whole thing, other than the bottom, because I'm not doing the bottom, it can be slightly tedious. And then I just trimmed off any excess with my scissors. Absolutely allow your pieces to completely dry before moving forward. Since we're going to be gluing anything extra onto this napkin, we want to make sure that it is dry so we don't destroy what we just decoupaged. And even sealing, don't seal over it just yet, okay? For our stems, I'm going to be using these little wood bits that I had in my stash and just taking some antique Waverly wax and applying a layer over each one of them. You could paint them brown, completely up to you. I love antique Waverly wax. It's probably one of my favorite things to use, to be honest with you. And I like how you can fade it, how you can make it darker or lighter just by the amount of layers. Anyhow, to attach our pieces, we're going to be using some Type Bond Quick and Thick. And I will tell you, since we're putting this on top of a napkin and not directly on top of wood, make sure there is excess around the outside of our piece. It's going to dry clear, and I mean, I'm going to, you know, put stuff around it anyway, you won't see it, but just this way that it grabs a hold really, really well, okay? Once your pieces are all dry, then accent them up however you would like. I did stamp and sign the back of these little guys because this way when I seal them, it's all in there, and grabbed us some messy moss and decided to take tacky glue and start putting our accents on. Feel free to decorate them however you want. I wanted to go a little rustic, so this made sense for me. I also added a little wood piece, a little laser wood leaf that I had in my stash, and made a little finger bow and popped right on the top of these, and think they are absolutely adorable. Let me know in the comments if you're going to be making you some mini Dollar Tree pumpkins this season. I love me some Toile decor, people. So when I seen these beautiful pieces at Kirkland's, I knew I had to dupe them. You can use whatever pumpkins you would like. I picked one of these little foam pumpkins up from Dollar Tree, and now we're gonna have to prep this joint. To start off, we're gonna be using some acrylic gesso. This stuff has a little bit of a texture in it, so it's gonna help fill in some of these gaps that are left on our foam pumpkin. Whenever you're working with foam, has imperfections, and it can be a pain to decoupage. So starting off with a nice acrylic gesso layer over your foam really helps create a great base. Once that layer dried, I then took my multi-surface and did a complete coat over the pumpkin. This just gave me full coverage, and I like to use this as a base on foam and glass. Now we're gonna bring in my TDS Creative ink Toile design. This is one of my personal designs, and it actually is on a larger sheet. This is all I have left in my stash that I'm going to be picking from. I'm going to use a little bit of water on a paintbrush to trim out some of these intricate details. I call this type of decoupage patchwork, each to their own, but this is what I like to call it, where you just take out little sections, little patches, and you pop them off to the side so we can decoupage our piece. Now, if you're really talented, you can gingerly wrap the pumpkin with the paper, and that can be extremely tedious, and it can also cause your designs to not line up. So this is just an easy way to allow everything to make sense as you're creating your Toile piece. For our medium, I'm just going to use some good old Mod Podge, and for our application, I'm going to use one of my TDS Creative fan brushes. Now, I like to spray the back of my tissue paper. I don't recommend spraying a napkin, people. So if you're going to use a napkin design, don't do that, okay? But with the tissue paper, it really helps to just kind of absorb up that Mod Podge just a little bit and help for more flawless application. You can absolutely do this stiff where you don't spray any water on there. It will still apply, but the water just makes it a little bit more pliable on the back there. And this stuff is pretty durable. While it's thin, it still allows you to kind of pick it up. See how I'm just gingerly moving it around and then apply it down. Now, if you're rough with it, you're going to tear it, so keep that in mind. And I just carried on the same process throughout the pumpkin until I was happy with each piece I placed. Feel free to slap the original pumpkin stem back on the pumpkin and paint it whatever color you want. I decided to grab some clay and mold me a crusty, rusty stem. I've been doing this for years whenever I do pumpkin DIYs. I love making my own stems. Unfortunately, I was out of my favorite clay, which is paper clay, for anyone interested. And I do usually keep that stuff linked in my Amazon affiliate link for anyone interested. This is just some random air dry clay I had in my stash. No name in particular. It's like a generic whatever. It got the job done. It really did. And as you see me here, I'm just there have been times I will wrap this stuff around paint sticks or around pencils. Another idea is to take some foil and, make it like a cone and then wrap it around the foil. The foil is really easy to like crumble out once the clay hardens. Completely up to you. Just pop in some ideas out there for anybody that wants to get crafty with their clay and make a pumpkin stem. And I wanted this to be a little spooky since our Kirkland's pieces, the stems match the toile color, and the toile color in my TDS Creative paper is black, so I'm going to paint this stem black. So I wasn't going for fancy and elegant. I was like, let's get a little bit of a Halloween-y feel with this stem. So I grabbed my black paints and I gave it a nice coat. I want to share a little tip with y'all for anybody that does patchwork. Whether you're using a napkin or tissue paper, and you see there's some separation between where the design may be and your paint color, you can easily fix that up by taking a paintbrush with a little bit of your background paint color and tappity tap 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 in anywhere you may see the edges of your paper. And like I said, this works. Napkins, it works even better because it's even thinner than the tissue paper. But I like to share this in case any beginners out there, even some pros out there at decoupage, ever notice that there is a disconnect between the background color and the tissue paper. This just really helps to blend everything together. Once it all dried, I put a nice little coat of Mod Podge all over our piece and think this turned out so darling. We can recreate this high-end piece from Kirkland's with just some orange eucalyptus. Unfortunately, I only have one piece that I found at Dollar Tree, but we're still gonna make this work. And for our vessel, we're gonna be using this beautiful green vase. I thought this would match perfectly for the Kirkland's dupe. Use whatever vessel you would like. Take the idea and remix it with whatever works for your fall decor. We are gonna need to make us a little beaded rope, and these are super simple to do. Just grab you some twine and some beads, of course, and thread your beads on here. Figure out how much you want to put on there. I decided to do 3 on one end of the bead and 4 on the other end, or the rope. 3 on one end, 4 on the other. And I did that just by threading them all together at one time, tying a knot at one end, and then cutting the excess off the other end. And people, I need to bring your attention to the children's scissors I'm using. You see them joints? How do I lose all my scissors and this is what I'm ending up with? Send help up in here, man. Your girl's drowning. I just want y'all to know you're not alone. You know what I'm saying? And realistically, people, I ain't had a child small enough to even own a pair of children's scissors like that. But I found them instead of the 5 pair I used to run my business. Anyhow, once I was done tying our beads around here, I added the eucalyptus back into our vase. I think even not having a full vase, this piece turned out really elegant looking. And I plan on popping this on one of my whatnot shows. Next time you're in Dollar Tree, head on over to their Crafter Square section and grab one of their large scrap wood blank pieces. We're going to transform this into an adorably cute, spooky fall decor piece. First up, we're going to need to paint this joint. Yeah, if I gotta endure the paint farts, you gotta endure it too. Next, I'm taking my water bottle and giving the board a little spritzy spritz. This does one of 2 things. It helps me move the paint around quicker and it helps me use less paint. I allowed this to completely dry and then went and found some fabric. You can use any kind of fabric you would like. I'm go with that neutral tone, and I like the stripes on this joint. And take this idea and remix it with whatever works for your decor. This is how I went about it. I laid the piece out and then traced the head of a ghost right onto the center of our board and then trimmed out our piece. Now, I did not like the fact that I could still see the green through the fabric, so I decided to grab some of my paint. And then I applied one coat over the section where I'm going to put our little ghost face at. Now you can put 2 coats on there, it's completely up to you. What I realized is that my fabric was thin and I needed more because then I could see the paint. So I just traced out another piece of fabric and then cut that down to size to fit right over top of our ghost face that we already had on here. If you have thicker fabric, you probably won't need to do this step. Now, I do like using tacky glue to attach fabric to wood. It's one of my favorite mediums for this. You could absolutely use whatever glue you would like. This is just what I work with. For the eyes, I'm starting off with a permanent marker, and that's so I can get the shape out right. You could use a pencil if you want it, but I wanted to make sure that I had that black background in case the black paint that I used had some bleeding with it, and I wasn't sure if the marker was going to bleed, but either way, it both turned out just fine. So this worked really well, taking the marker and then doing a rough sketch and then coming back in with some black multi-surface paint and coloring everything in. At this point, if you're happy with your ghost, leave it alone, but I wanted to turn ours into a little girl. So I decided to grab some messy moss because, you know, what little girl doesn't want some messy moss dangling off their head? You could use a bow or create it however you want. I just decided to attach some messy moss here and then add some floral bits right onto the corner of our piece, and absolutely love how this piece turned out. Next time you're in Dollar Tree, head on over to their Crafter Square section and grab one of their little wood hanging pallet baskets, or any of their little wood baskets really would work for this easy burlap basket fall decor piece. And obviously we're gonna need some burlap. Now you can get your burlap wherever you would like, but I do pick mine up at Walmart. I try to buy in bulk and save where I can, and I feel like I get the most for my money out of purchasing this right here for $5.96 for anyone interested. And all we're gonna do is cut 2 big old pieces of this burlap, making sure that it is large enough that it covers our basket, that we don't see it at all. Make sure to remove those handles and then grab you some floral foam. Now, I also picked this up from Walmart, and all of you are judging me right now, and that's okay. I can take it, okay? Because this worked, right? I did beat that box down on top of the floral foam with a hammer and broke it right off. And it worked like a charm, okay? We got a nice perfect piece of floral foam in our box. But by all means, if you want to cut yours down, you know, the old-fashioned way, you go right ahead. I won't judge you for it. Now, we're just going to take that burlap and tie it all up as far as we can go around our basket, and then grab some twine. If you want to glue some stuff down, you can. I didn't want to glue mine down in case I wanted to change the color of the burlap out, just to give you guys different ideas. I might remix this idea around Christmas. And I really feel like maybe I could have cut the burlap just a little bit longer so I wasn't struggling so badly to hold the little bit that went over the basket in place. But I thought this turned out really, really cute. And you can wrap as much twine around your basket as you would like. I just wanted a simple little rope and a tiny little bow. Feel free to add you a button in there, extra floral in there, make you a messy bow, grab some fabric, add an extra loop of fabric around your twine, whatever. Get as creative as you would like with this idea. Remix it to work in your home. And I went with some neutral florals. You could even grab some fairy lights and twirl them around your floral pieces, and then style it in your home and love your creativity. I picked up this jacked up painted bucket from Dollar Tree. Don't don't worry too much about that paint job. We're going to take care of that. And then recently at Dollar Tree, I found these awesome crocheted mini pumpkins on a stick. I love them so much. I could have swore I bought that white one too though, because there is a white one. I really thought I put that joint in the bag, but anyhow. To paint this up, we're going to be using a mix of multi-surface and some chalk paint, mostly because I didn't have a color that I wanted somewhere in between that sandy stone light tan color, and thought that these two would give me that result, along with the fact that I really like using multi-surface to cover on paint, so I felt like I would just get a better adhesion mixing the two together. I just applied one coat over top of the whole piece, and while that was drying, I went and grabbed this little wood tag I had in my stash, and I get these from Walmart. I think they're like $1 and change. They're not really expensive. Next, I grabbed my TDS Decoupage tissue paper, and this is called Moody Fall. I just want to cut out this top corner section to go right over our tag. We're going to use that as like the focal point in the center of our little bucket decor piece. And please just ignore the fact that I have the child scissors again. I don't know where my doll scissors went, but we can always count on these little guys to show up for work. You know what I'm saying? I trimmed down the little section and then just pressed around the edges of the tag with my finger so we could then cut this out so it fit over the tag, and any excess you can just sand the extra off. But for the most part, whenever I do this, it works pretty well. We're going to be using this Folk Art Outdoor in the mat for our medium. You can use Mod Podge, whatever. This is just what I'm using for this project. And we're going to spread this all over our piece and then bring in our little water bottle. You do not have to spray this if you do not want to. This is just the way I'm doing it. You could absolutely apply this dry. There is nothing wrong with that. And then I'm just using my finger to rub down the piece. If you're gentle, you can peel it back up without no worry of the tissue paper tearing. And if you want to use some cling wrap or a brayer, whatever you would like to flatten out your piece, a sponge, I like using sponges too. I set that to the side to dry and then grab 2 different colors in the burlap. Now I'm just going to layer this in the bucket. If you want to pop a transfer on the bucket, or if you want to decoupage a bucket or paint the bucket different colors, completely up to you. I wanted to keep this really simple and just add a little decorative accent that was just more than me popping the pumpkins in the bucket. So I added different colors in our burlap and then popped our little crocheted pumpkins in here, our decoupage piece. Added some messy moss, of course, because it's fall. We gotta have that messy moss in there, and think this piece turned out really cute. Different idea for bucket decor instead of just popping florals in here for the fall season. For this DIY, we're going to be transforming these 2 pieces of towel into a set of coasters. I picked these up from Home Depot. You can absolutely get the ones from Dollar Tree if you would like. For our decoupage portion, we're going to be using my Moody Fall TDS Creative Decoupage tissue paper. And one of my favorite little prints is this ghost having some coffee. To apply the tissue paper, we're going to be using one of my TDS Creative artist brushes. This is in the fan style. And I know what you're thinking, Brandy, what's the Dollar Tree part? Well, the dishwasher safe Mod Podge, of course. However, you're going to see me dipping into my big jar right here because I was down to my last little bit in that jar. So I squirted out what I could and then grabbed this sucker. There are a lot of ways that you can make towels. And if you want to iron on your towel, you absolutely can. If you want to paint your towel, you absolutely can. I'm just sharing with you how you can also take the dishwasher safe Mod Podge and apply it on here. And then if you're using tissue paper, you can, at least my tissue paper, I'm not sure if they're all created equal, but you can spray the back of mine a little bit with some water and then press it on down onto the towel with your Mod Podge while it's still wet. And here is me just taking a dry kitchen sponge and pressing the piece down, squeezing out any excess Mod Podge that might be underneath of our piece. When I was happy with that, I just allowed that to dry off to the side and started working on the second one. And I applied the same technique. If you wanted to use the iron-on method, you could just allow this to dry and then take your tissue paper and put it on top of there dry. You don't need to spray it along with your parchment paper, and then just iron it on. Once everything is dry, no matter how you're putting your tissue paper on your towels, take a layer of your sealer. In this case, we're using the dishwasher safe Mod Podge. Now, I like to apply a layer of the sealer, let that dry 2 to 3 hours or sometimes the whole next day because I'll forget about it, and then apply another layer. I might do 3. It can take, if you read the directions, it's like 30 days for the cure. So keep that in mind before the tackiness is completely gone on top of your towels. Now, these little sticky pads I pick up in a pack from Home Depot, and I just apply on the back so they don't scuff up our tabletops. Grab 6 of these pallets next time you're in Dollar Tree, people. We're going to be using them to make a large pumpkin DIY for fall. And you're going to want to recreate this and put your own spin on it. First things first, we're going to need to attach all these little gems. So line them up so they look just like this. And then grab whatever you would like to attach them. I'm going to be using some popsicle sticks. That's what I like to call them. If you refer to them as crafter sticks or, you know, tongue depressors, you do you. But I'm going to call them popsicle stick. Then I cut different sizes off and they went flying, and then I went collected them. It's fine. I like to live dangerously, and it keeps my mind sharp with wonder when I don't know where they went. To attach all the pieces, I'm going to use some Titebond Quick and Thick and some hot glue. And I just took the larger sections of the popsicle stick and used 3 of those right down the center, and then I had like medium-sized pieces cut and used them in the larger intersection pieces that connected all of them, and then teeny tiny pieces on the other parts. Again, you can attach these however you would like. This is just how I went about it. I'm gonna make a brim for the hat, and I'm gonna use a paint stick for that. I never like that little edge on there, so I'm gonna bring on in our miter shears and just nip that sucker right on off. For our paint color, I'm gonna use pumpkin, and I'm actually gonna add a little bit of this Tuscan red. It is one of my favorite things to add to this pumpkin color. It gives us like, I like to call it like a moody orange. Okay. And then before I start painting everything, I take my water bottle and give a spritzy spritz all over the sections I'm going to paint. This really helps to move the paint around quickly and get in all those little sections. You can absolutely do this dry without any water. It's entirely up to you, but I was able to get this painted in less than 5 minutes. When it was dry, I grabbed some Mod Podge so we could apply a nice thick juicy layer all over to the top section where the hat is going to go, so we can do the iron on method with some decoupage tissue paper. Now, I like to pop a nice thick layer and allow this to dry overnight. If you don't have that kind of patience, 3 to 4 hours, I let it dry naturally, and some people like to heat gun it. I don't do that. For the decoupage tissue paper, we're going to be using my TDS creative design called Scripts, and I just cut a little section out to size, and then it was time to bring on in the iron. I use this, you can use whatever iron you would like. I usually have this right next to my craft station, and I do turn mine all the way up. Make sure you grab you a piece of parchment paper, and it doesn't matter. I've used the shiny side, the non-shiny side. I get asked that often. Doesn't, I use whatever. Okay, just put the parchment paper down. And then I'll start from one side and work my way over to the next. And I spend some time ironing on the piece. I like to do a good 5 minutes, people, like really taking my time going over, making sure it's melted on here. And a good way to check, I like to share, is to pull up everything. Like you can see, I'm literally pulling this off the table to show you how adhered this is to the top of these palettes. I painted the paint stick black. Just, you know, shove this in here so y'all seen. It's painted, it's drying. And then I grabbed my X-Acto knife. And let's bring on in a finger sander because we're gonna need that too. But I'm just gonna be using it around the edges. My preferred method to remove the excess in between is the X-Acto knife. And to get the excess off on the other side, I just cut on the very top and I grab it and hold it in place and then go down the opposite side. I used my Titebond Quick and Thick to attach the brim on our hat and then grabbed a pencil and started sketching out our face. Pumpkin faces are really fun and super easy. You're really just doing 3 triangles and then figure out how many teeth you want your smile to have. I decided to keep mine fairly simple, so this way if anybody wanted to recreate my smile at home, you seen we only needed 2 little bottom teeth. I thought that was super cute. But by all means, people, put as many teeth in your pumpkin smile as you would like. I felt like the hat needed a little something something extra, so I took this black piece of burlap and I frayed around the edges and really love how creative this little piece turned out.